Okay, we're going to get started. My name is Dr. Sekou Franklin, and I'm the president of the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. And we want to thank you to this chatter webinar with Dr. Elsie Scott. We also want to thank Mr. Aaron Hooker, who is the undergraduate representative of the to the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. This webinar / chat focuses on career opportunities for political scientists. It's hosted by the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. Our featured guest is Dr. Elsie Scott, who's well known in the political science community and also well known in the Washington circles as well. I'll give you a little bit of her bio, and she's going to give a presentation for 15 or so minutes after we do some rolling credits, and then we'll open it up to question and answers, and we'll end by 9 o'clock Eastern and 8 o'clock Central if you're on Central Time. Dr. Elsie Scott serves as the founding director of the Ronald Walters Leadership and Public Policy Center. She previously served as president and chief executive of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and as the organization's vice president for research and programs. She actually served 2 tours of duty at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Dr. Scott has served as executive director of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, also known as NOBLE, and deputy commissioner of training for the New York City Police Department. She's also worked with policymakers in the Justice Department and other executive agencies at the federal level. She is also the past president of the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. And before I turn it over to her, I do want to make sure you know that if you have any questions, you can text 615-208-4354. Again, if you want to text questions, text those questions to 615-208-4354. We also have a chat room in this webinar that you can ask questions, but probably the preference is to text those questions because we had some difficulty with the chat room earlier. You can find us on Twitter at NCOBPS Tweets. You can find us on Facebook. You can also take a look at our website, and please come to our national conference in March of 2020, which will be in Atlanta. If you have any other questions, I want to make sure that you know I'll leave an email address for you where you can email us. And without further ado, we're going to get started with Dr. Elsie Scott.
Okay, good evening. I hope everybody can hear me. My slides are going to be up on the screen, so I'll go through these as quickly and as efficiently as I can. But I want to thank you for joining this, our first webinar sponsored by NCOBPS. And we invite you to send any comments you have, any recommendations for future webinars. We go to the next slide. Okay, when you think about a political science degree, that some people, or especially people who are not in our field, will say, you know, what can you do with a political science degree? And so what I'm going to try to do in my next few minutes is to talk about what you can do with a political science degree. And I want to first start off by talking about what are the strengths of a person who has a political science degree. And I think that we have 4 major strengths. We usually have good writing skills because we've written many term papers. We have taken research courses, so our research skills hopefully are good. And tied with our writing and research skills, we also develop good analytical skills and verbal skills. Next slide. Okay, so typically, most political science majors either choose to go to law school, to go to graduate school, getting a master's and/or a PhD, or they choose to work in some kind of government position. And now I want to go through some of the pluses and minuses of the 3 career paths. So let's go to law school. When I would have interns at CBCF, most of them were political science majors, and I asked them what are they going to do once they graduate, and so many of them said they wanted to go to law school. And I'll talk a little bit about my background in a few minutes. So what I tried to do was to outline some of the pluses and minuses of going to law school and going to graduate school. One of the pluses I see of law school, it is a versatile degree that you can work in a lot of different fields with a law degree. In Washington, D.C., we always remark that every third person in Washington has a law degree. And depending on what you do with your law degree, there's a potential for high earnings with your degree. Your minuses would be that you have to put in a 3-year investment, 3 years of law school. Then you have to pass the bar for most positions that you're going to use a law degree. And then often you come out of law school with a lot of debt compared to some other opportunities you might try. For graduate school, let's have the graduate school slide. Okay, graduate school, the pluses are often there are jobs and educational opportunities available once you get your degree, because it's often said that with the political science degree, you need to go and get some additional education for many of the positions that are going to take you to the top. When you get a master's degree or a PhD in political science, I see it as a lifetime of learning, because often you go into a teaching field, and that means that you're constantly learning to stay on top of your field to make certain that you are giving your students the best of your knowledge. Many people choose a college professorship as a career track if they major in political science. And many of us go into college teaching because we want to mold the minds of the next generation, to make certain that we have people coming behind us who are going to explore and dig for knowledge and add to the field through research and scholarship. And then some people when they're a college professor, they like the fact that they have 9-month contracts, even though most people end up working 12 months. But often it's an opportunity to do some international travel, get a Fulbright or something like that. The minuses is that you usually have to put in 4 years plus after undergraduate school if you're seeking a PhD. And then there are the costs involved if you stay in school that long, especially if you're not working. And college professors often, depending on the university, often the salary is not that inviting. So we say that you don't go and get a degree in political science necessarily. Well, you don't get a degree in political science because you want to be rich. You get there because you want to add to the body of knowledge. Next slide. And some people choose not to go to law school and choose not to go to graduate school. They try to get jobs right out of college. And many of these jobs are in city, state, or local government. And so the advantage of that, you can start your career right after college. You can start paying off those student loans because you'll have a paycheck. And depending on what type of position you take, it may be a way to give back to your communities. See, one of the minuses is I see fewer federal jobs living here in Washington, D.C., fewer civil service jobs. When I came out of college, many people took the civil service exam and they went in and got a GS rating with the federal government, and they got good jobs, and now they're retiring with pensions. Those days are leaving us. So there may not be as many enticing positions available as it was when I came out of college. And then some of the civil service jobs may not be, give you the opportunity to think and do the things you want to do. They may be more restricted than what you'd like to do. Next slide. Okay, so how do you find the various opportunities beyond just a law degree or PhD in political science? I'd say start off by deciding what do you want to accomplish out of life. And so that involves some goal setting. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And that involves a lot of networking. Washington, D.C. is a great town for networking. Some other places may not offer you as much networking opportunities, but you can attend professional conferences and go to other gatherings. And that's where you can meet people who can help you in your career. I'll recommend internships, especially if you're interested in working on Capitol Hill. You should try to get an internship that will bring you to Washington so that you can make those connections before you graduate from undergraduate school. And then there's a whole thing of exploring opportunities and jobs that are not necessarily political science, like in criminal justice, transportation, economics, or the environment. So there are a lot of fields that branch off from political science. And if you start early in those fields, you can become one of the experts in the field. And of course, we know that research is another great jump off in terms of career opportunities. And then I speak to your professors. Often your professors have contacts at places where they have where they've gone to school, and they can help you make those connections. And then other professors, not just maybe your political science professors, maybe talking with your econ professors. There's a shortage of Black economists. And so you may start off with the political science degree, but if you have an aptitude for econ, for economics, that's a great field, especially for Black political scientists. Okay, next. Let me just talk briefly about my career path. I went to undergraduate school at Southern University, HBCU, and didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get an undergraduate degree, and after I got there, decided I wanted to major in political science, but I was doing it because I wanted to go to law school because my daddy wanted me to go to law school. But as it turned out, I had a professor named Jewel Prestidge who decided that I should get a PhD instead of a law degree. So she won my soul from my daddy, and I went to graduate school and decided to take the track of being a college professor. And I really thought that's where I would stay because I really enjoyed being a college professor. But then getting married, moving, and trying to find a place where we could have two careers in the same place. So I ended up becoming a research associate. And then I found out I could survive working through the summer, because that was the worst thing, I guess. The withdrawal pains once I left being a college professor was getting used to working 12 months. But then after I found out I could do that and I made more money, and then I decided that I wouldn't be wedded to that college professor as the only track I wanted to pursue. And I eventually got into the nonprofit world. I started off as a researcher working for a nonprofit and ended up becoming the chief executive. I didn't know anything about nonprofit management except what I had observed from my father, who ran several nonprofits when I was growing up. But there was not income coming out of those. So I had to learn a lot about nonprofit management, but it was really on the job training. And I just reached out to the resources that I could find in order to become successful. Then I decided to try city government because I had one of my mentors, a man who I met at a professional conference who was a criminologist. And he wanted me to come and work for him when he got a job with the city of New York. And that's how I ended up going to New York and becoming deputy commissioner, training for the police department. I had not been a police officer. All I knew about policing was what I had learned through my research because my doctoral dissertation was on the police. But often you can find out by writing your dissertation in a particular area, publishing in a particular area, that can end up with job opportunities that you didn't even know about. And now I'm at Howard University, but I'm not teaching. I am running a public policy center at Howard. And that's another track that often there are these centers within universities where you can get a job. Okay, keep going. And we can talk more about my career when we get into Q&A, but I'm trying to get through the slides, make sure we get through all of them before the hour is over. And I just threw this slide in here. It just gives you a list of some of the NCOBPS members who have held or currently hold elected positions, because I think that's something we don't talk about as much now. When I first joined NCOBPS, there were a lot of elected officials who were actively involved in NCOBPS. And so these are just some of the names of some of those people, including a a member of the U.S. House of Representatives who had also been Lieutenant Governor of California, but he had a PhD and he was a member of NCOBPS. Next slide. Okay, what I've done here, and I'll just go through these kind of quickly because we are up to 8:30 now. It's looking at some of the federal government opportunities, the state, local, and international opportunities. So at the federal level, of course, you have your elective positions. You know, one day maybe there'll be an NCOBPS member who will be president of the United States. But as I've already mentioned, we've had one NCOBPS member that was a member of the House of Representatives. So there are those elected positions at the federal level. And then the congressional staff, as I've already mentioned, that if you're interested in becoming a member of a congressional staff, one of the easiest ways to get in there is through internships. Another way would be doing volunteers at their district office, working in their campaigns, or if you know them through family members, etc. But when I came to Washington, I thought that because I had a master's in political science, I could easily get a job at a congressional office. That was not true. They were more interested in lawyers and persons with some kind of experience, whether it was at the state level or through campaigns or internships. And then you have a number of positions throughout the federal agencies. Some are appointed and some are civil service. As we've seen with the Republican administrations, they have cut back on the size of the federal job market. And so they are contracting out a lot of positions. So I added contracts down here at the bottom. And often we don't think of jobs in the judiciary, but there are some positions there. In fact, there was a political scientist who had a PhD and a law degree that was the head of whatever, I've forgotten what the name of the agency in judiciary that does a lot of their research. And then you have all those training programs where they train federal judges. There's a whole staff there. So these are some positions we often don't think about. The Library of Congress, the Congressional Research Service. We've had political scientists that have served there in staff positions, and it's a good job. You get a chance to do research. You make connections with members of Congress, and you're working at the Library of Congress, and I just love that building. So I would just love to work there, I think. Then you have the museums like the Smithsonian's and research centers such as the Woodrow Wilson Center. So there are a lot of different opportunities in the federal government. All of them are not in Washington, D.C., of course. Most of them are in Washington, but now there's a move to try to decentralize some of the federal government positions. Okay, state government. State government, again, you have your appointed positions, you have your executive appointments, you have elected positions such as governor, lieutenant governor. And I would like to see a political scientist become Secretary of State because these voter registration processes are so messed up at the state level. And so we really need somebody to run for those positions. And then there are a number of merit jobs. And the same thing at the state level. A lot of states are contracting out a lot of jobs. And then you can get positions as consultant, especially you have your own consulting firm. Okay, local government. Same thing, appointed positions, elected positions, merit jobs, contracts, and consultancies. Okay, next one. Okay, international opportunities. Often I think people outside of Washington and New York often don't think about all the international positions that are available. And so I've just listed some. Naturally, we often think about the Foreign Service positions working at the State Department, but there are a number of other positions outside of that. And I would suggest starting off by trying to get a study abroad somewhere in your college career. I know at Howard University, we have a large study abroad program where almost any student who wants to study abroad, who has the right grades, can find the money to go and spend a semester abroad or summer abroad. There's not as many people volunteering for the Peace Corps, but that's another opportunity. I know Dr. Shelby Lewis, who's a former president of NCOBPS. She started off her career I think in Uganda in the Peace Corps. We often don't think of the United Nations. There are plenty jobs in the United Nations, and all of them are not located in New York. Some are located in other parts of the world. You have Fulbright fellowships, which are more temporary type of jobs. But I know Shelby Lewis, again, was on the board of the Fulbright. And while she was on the board, I think she did a lot to try to get more Blacks applying for and receiving Fulbrights. And then you have your NGOs, your non-government organizations, and there are a lot of large ones. I recently was talking with a woman who I knew. She's now working at the Wikimedia Foundation, which is one of the largest NGOs. And I've been trying to schedule an appointment when she's back in the country where I can talk with her about opportunities for students at that organization. Then you have organizations like CARE, some of the humanitarian organizations, Doctors Without Borders, all those organizations, many of them need staff people who can do research and carry out some of the administrative work of those organizations. And then you can go and spend some time working at international universities. Dr. May King, one of our members of NCOBPS, I think she spent about 7 or 8 years, or maybe longer than that, in Africa teaching, and even found a husband while she was over there. So she got international opportunity in terms of work as well as her personal life. And then my final slide is something I call other opportunities. We have NCOBPS members who've been college presidents. Right now we have Lester Newman, who's the college president, who's a PhD in political science. And then there are not enough of us, or I'm to say us, I mean African Americans, working at think tanks like the Brookings Institution, like the Woodrow Wilson Center. There are a lot of associations, especially if you don't mind living in Washington, D.C., and nonprofits that are looking for people with political science backgrounds or research backgrounds. So this is the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. We have Dr. Minna Dempsey there now. I used to be there. Dr. Maya Rockamore worked there when Linda Williams was living. She had worked there. So it's a lot of political scientists have been connected with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You have the American Political Science Association, where we have Kim Mealy working there, May King worked there, cities, and a lot of other nonprofits that need researchers and administrators. So those are some opportunities. And we often don't talk about lobbying because often people see lobbying almost as a bad word. But I have brought a lot of students talking about careers in lobbying. Of course, many of the lobbyists who are most successful here in Washington have worked with corporations before they got into lobbying. But there are some lobbyists, that Black woman who's been very successful. She's represented, I think, Spelman and a number of other universities, as well as she's represented some of the cities with Black mayors. And so that's something you could look into. And political campaigns, the managed campaigns, people can do polling, fundraisers. That's a big area. When President Obama was running for president, he wanted some Black fundraisers. and he was having a hard time finding people with the experience. And so one of the white fundraisers that he had hired came to me. I was president at CBCF at that time, and asked if we had any students in our internship programs who were interested in learning how to do political fundraising. And one young man did end up going to work for this fundraising firm, and now he's working for GM, I think. But that is an area that really needs more African Americans there. And then policy specialists. So what I want to do now is stop talking and is things that I didn't cover. Say, Cootie, some things you want to throw in?
Yes, can everybody hear me? I'm gonna unmute some folks, and then they can ask questions or send a text to different places. But just a couple of points, and I'll ask Aaron if Aaron can have access to his phone if he has any questions as well. The Peace Corps used to be, I think, a 2-year program. I could be wrong. Now the Peace Corps has changed, so it allows for shorter stints abroad. So you don't necessarily have to commit to 2 years or a year. I know some folks now are doing Peace Corps for 6 months, and also Peace Corps is also now open to older people, retired folks. So Peace Corps has undergone some changes for the positive, I think. And just real quick, Dr. Scott, because we have some undergraduate students, can you define what a civil servant is?
Okay. A civil servant is simply a person who works for government. And in the federal government, you have a whole civil service system, and it's changing. And so I have to go and see what it's like now, because I know they're contracting out a lot of the recruitment of federal employees. But it used to be you took a civil service exam and you got a rating, and that qualified you to get certain positions in the federal government. And at the local level, it's often maybe called merit, the merit service, but it's just a matter, it just refers to jobs in government.
Okay. So now we can open up to questions, and I'm going to unmute everybody. And if you give me 20 seconds, and you can also text questions to this phone number, 615-208-4354, 615-208-4354. And I can read your questions. We have about 20 minutes for the Q&A, and I'm going to mute everyone. I think I'm going to mute them. Or if some of you want to ask questions, you can unmute yourselves. But are there any questions? Aaron, at University of Connecticut, we can start with you first. Do you have any questions? Again, you can text questions to 615-208-4354. Does anyone else have any questions?
Somebody's trying to ask a question, Connecticut.
You may just want to text the questions in case there's difficulty to 615-208-4354. While they're texting the questions, I'll ask you this question, Dr. Scott. Take one of your 3 jobs. It could be deputy commissioner in New York City Police Department. It could be NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, or it could be the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And what does an average day look like for you? What do you do, say, for example, as NOBLE, the executive director? What does an average day or week look like for you in terms of work product?
Okay, in terms of running a nonprofit in Washington, an average day involves meetings, meetings, meetings. And the meetings may be like you might have testimony on the Hill. You may have to go and meet with Congress people. You may be meeting with people who fund your projects. You spend a lot of time fundraising with these in the evenings after work, you have to go to a lot of events. And people think that's am I muted? Yeah.
Got you, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You often have to go to a lot of meetings after work. I call it the grip and grin circuit, where you go to receptions, but really you're not going there necessarily just drink and have fun, but you're going there to make contacts, to connect with people, to find funders for your programs. And so you have, it's mainly meetings and fundraising. That's what running nonprofits, the crux of your work. But CBCF, as CEO there, was the internships and the fellowships that we constantly had a group of interns coming in every semester and during the summer. So I got a chance to meet so many young people who were aspiring to do great things. And so that was the fun part of the job to me.
Okay.
In New York City, again, it was a lot of meetings as Deputy Commissioner of Training, and reviewing documents that were coming in, going to training classes, reviewing training materials. I was also over everybody who, we had a number of scholarships at the police department. So all the people who applied for scholarships at the police department, whether they were going to law school, undergraduate school, the academy, so I had to put together teams to review applications. But that I was in charge of the women's issues. So I had to keep in touch with women about the department, looking at how they were treated and working out a plan for the department to address those concerns.
Okay. Again, if you have questions, you can text them to 615-208-4354. We have one question from the University of Connecticut, and that question is, with your extensive career path, what challenges have you faced as a Black woman? Again, with your extensive career path, what challenges have you faced as a Black woman?
Okay, thank you for the question. That's a good question. I think I faced the most challenges as a Black woman probably was at the New York Police Department. And police departments really had been traditionally primarily male, at one time all male. And so just trying to get them to accept and integrate women into the process and recognize that women can be leaders and not just secretaries, etc. So I think it's just a matter of being accepted and people understanding that I had a brain and that I could do work. Like when I went to the New York Police Department, the guy who working under me said, you don't have to worry about anything, we'll do all the work. And I asked him, why do you think I moved to New York if I didn't intend to do any work? I thought that was the weirdest thing. So he thought I would move to New York and take a job there, and I want somebody else to do my work, and I just want to sit there and look pretty or something. Many challenges being a woman and working in Black organizations, as I did with the New York Police Department.
Okay. Are there any other questions? You can unmute yourself. Let me see if I can. Okay. Give me 1 second. I think we got a couple more questions coming through. Yes, we have 2 more questions. Okay, this question is, if you could do your career path over again, would you have gone to law school?
I probably wouldn't now if I know what I know, because at several instances throughout my life, I still started to go to law school even after I had worked on my PhD, because while I was working on my PhD, I married a man who was in law school. And so he tried to get me to, when I finished my coursework in my COPS, he tried to get me to come and go to law school with him. And later on, after we divorced, and I said, well, my dad is dead, and I divorced my husband, I can go to law school because I want to do it for myself now rather than for a man who's in my life. But I couldn't get anybody to give me a full scholarship for law school. So I decided that I've done quite well with a PhD. So I don't have any regret of not having gone to law school.
Okay. This is another question. What are the top 3 books you would recommend to those of us students who are studying political science? Yeah, what are the top 3 books you would recommend to those studying political science?
That's a hard question, and Sekou, I may need you to help weigh in on that, because it really depends on what the person's area of concentration they're interested in as to what would be the 3 top books, whether you're interested in American politics, you're interested in African politics, or what have you. I really can't answer that, because I'd have to know more about where you want to go in your career as to what would be the best books for you. Sekou, you want to weigh in on that one?
Well, for students who are trying to be practitioners in the field and not professors, I would recommend reading something about how Black administrators and bureaucrats are able to engage in bureaucratic infighting. So I'm particularly attracted to the stories of, you probably know them, I don't know them, Dr. Scott, people like Ed Sylvester and Clifford Alexander and even Arthur Fletcher, people like that, who were able to navigate a complicated bureaucracy using kind of bureaucratic infighting. So I don't know if I can recommend a book, but just recommend how people can go into the practitioner world and learn how to survive, at the same time exercise influence inside of the process. That's what I would recommend for people going into the field. I do a lot of social movement work, so I'm interested in how social movements operate in particular, and I like an older book from the 1990s called I've Got the Light of Freedom by Charles Payne, which looks at the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement, and which is also up your alley, Dr. Scott, because I know you're involved in some of the voting rights stuff as a teenager in Louisiana. So there's so much stuff out there that you can glean, that you can take from. And you have in your room, if you're at, I think that question maybe came from the University of Connecticut, I could be wrong, and you have in your presence some scholars at the University of Connecticut who have written great books as well. And maybe another question. We have time for 2 more questions, I believe.
Often, biographies.
You're fading out a little bit. You faded out a little bit, Dr. Scott. Better? What did you say? You said biographies?
Okay, I was just going to say, yeah, often reading biographies can be helpful to you. Just a matter of finding the right biographies, you know, because so many people are writing books nowadays and just grinding them out. But I like biographies, I like historical books, in addition to just straight political science. But, you know, somebody raised a question about women. A lot of the women in political science are producing books about women's issues and so forth. So, in fact, who came out with a book yesterday? One of our NCOBPS, Ron Walter's book. You know, that's one I like. You know, the biography that Robert Smith produced year before last on Ron Walter's life. I enjoy it because I run the Ron Walter Center, so I'm always trying to learn, even because he was a fascinating person, both as an academic and as what I call a scholar activist.
Okay, we have two more questions, and one question is there an inspirational book outside of political science or books that you think students should read?
Is there inspirational what?
Is there an inspirational book or a book not written by a political scientist? Yes. Is there an inspirational book or a book not written by a political scientist that you think would be helpful for the students?
Oh, you know, read 7 books that you really like, and you don't have to explain why you like them, but they just wanted each day to post a different book. And I'm trying to think of what were the 7 that I chose. I chose Make Me Wanna Holler. Wow, why am I drawing a blank on the brother's name? He's the Washington Post reporter.
Nathan McCall?
Yeah.
Nathan McCall, a journalist.
Yeah, I chose that one because I really enjoyed it, because here you had a Black middle class young man who grew up and ended up in the prison system. And so I think often, many times, people think that you only end up in the prison system if you grow up in impoverished settings. And so I enjoyed that. I also posted because Roots was like the first book that I really, I guess, got into looking at tracing your roots back to Africa. Having Our Say by the Delaney Sisters. These were the 2 Black women whose father, I think, had been president of St. Aug. But they lived to be 102 and 104, something like that. And people discovered them, talked about the routine of living and so forth. So I like that book because it talked about living and eating right and exercise, etc. What other books did I have? Forgotten what the other 3 were. I had another one by one. Oh, no, I didn't have that one. Michelle Alexander's book. I don't think I know what I had. The Warmth of Other Suns. About migration, and where she studied people that migrated from Louisiana to California, from Florida, I think, to New York. Very interesting book because I had family members who had followed some of those migration patterns.
Okay.
I think we have another question. I don't want to take too long on that one.
The last question is, particularly for the students, is what got you into political science as an undergraduate student? Why did you choose political science as a major or as a pathway coming out of undergraduate school?
Oh, okay. As I mentioned, my father wanted me to be a lawyer, and so when I went to school, political science was the natural path to to being a lawyer. Of course, now, you have more people majoring in business and some of the other fields going to law school, but that was where most of the people who were going to go to law school went to political science. So I think that's the reason why I started about majoring in social work. And then I changed my mind because I liked I enjoyed the professors. I enjoyed the books that I had to read in political science more than I did what I had to read for social work. And then after from college, in between Iowa and Southern University, I went to Chicago, and I got a job as a social worker in the Cook County Department of Public Aid. And that convinced me that I had chosen the right career path by going to political science, and rather than being a social worker, because it was rough. It was rough working in public housing in Chicago and dealing with the gangs and so forth. So I knew I had made the right choice of political science.
Okay. Well, that concludes our webinar. And if you have any questions, I want to thank Dr. Elsie Scott for joining us and participating in this webinar, featuring her. For our guests who are just meeting Dr. Elsie Scott, if you need any help in Washington, D.C., she's always helpful to students. She's helped my students who've gone to Washington, D.C. It's a tough week for her because the last week she lost two of her colleagues, Congressman Elijah Cummings, who she was close to, and Congressman John Conyers. So she took some time with us to share experiences, and we greatly thank her for doing that. If you're interested in NCOBPS, go to NCOBPS tweets on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. For students, please submit an abstract and try to attend our conference in Atlanta. We do have travel grants that are also available to you. Look us up on Facebook as well. If you have any questions, you can still text questions to us, so we can try to provide many answers as we can. You can text those questions to 615-208-4354, 615-208-4354. And again, we'd like to thank Dr. Elsie Scott for assisting with this. And we also want to thank Mr. Aaron Hooker, our NCOBPS undergraduate representative, who helped to set this webinar up for students across the country. So if there's any other thing you want to say, Dr. Scott, we can conclude this webinar in chat. And
no, I just say one thing about internships. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation has a lot of internships, and so they should go to their website. And as I mentioned, Dr. Dempsey works there also, but between the two of us, we can give them some assistance with applying for internships.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we'll share this webinar chat on our podcast. Our podcast is called The Freedom Plow, and we'll also share it probably through YouTube. So we're fairly easy to find, and we thank you again.